So just moving on to scaling in a compromised supply chain, and we have touched on this already. So both Daniel and David, I don't know how to sort of set this one up, but both of you have said to me that's something you want to discuss. I've got a little preamble and then maybe we'll just flow. So, scaling is a balancing act. You'll recognize this, Daniel, actually, because I think that's complete plagiarism of what you sent to me. So you've got scaling is a balancing act, borrowing Dan's words, not over investing in capacity, space or stock, or sitting on expensive inventory for too long, nor failing to supply sufficient products to keep up with customer demand. So that whole, balancing act, which we've already touched on a little bit, how do you maintain system agility when rapidly scaling the business? Dan and David, do you want us, I don't want you to unpack your dirty laundry in front of everyone here and the wider field, but I know this is both sort of dear to both of you. David, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I think we've probably touched on scale and sort of just in the last comments that I'm making about TikTok, D2C. At the same time we are going into trade. We've seen an opening of the on trade, and obviously that helps drive certain elements of the off trade. We as a business are cautious in where we are looking to put ourselves, especially in the off trade. We're not looking to go into the major multiples at this current time. We don't want to do that at the moment, and that's a strategic decision for us when you're gaining margins for 90% of your business through a D2C community. That said, we are looking at new markets. We are looking at European expansion. We are already present in the US. We have set up production sites in the US. And with that, you're then looking at how do you optimize the operational physical supply chain in terms of geographic locations. At the moment, we have a single solution in America, which will be supplying America out of Texas. However, the US is a massive market, and as a business they're going to want to separate out so that we've got more localized supply, perhaps in the northeast of the US, perhaps on the west coast in California, perhaps down towards Florida, and making sure that then we've got the ability to scale both in terms of the materials but in systems. And as Phil's already spoken about, minimum stock levels within each of those locations, forecast sales within each of those areas, understanding what lead times are, or the agility of the 3PLs to ensure that we've got finished goods within those areas. In addition to that, European expansion, we've left the EU. We have a VAT registration in Holland. However, if we want to then be present in multiple locations around Europe and supply from sources in Germany, Spain, Scandinavia, the eastern regions, France, Benelux, again, making sure that we have the support systems, both from a financial perspective and tax knowledge, to enable us to do that. And again, so that we don't get burnt. And this then comes down to perhaps some conversations. And I think right at the start, we spoke about community and learning from each other. Which markets can you engage with? Which markets can you work with? And then I guess coming back to Unleashed and systems there, how do the systems then support us when we are doing that in a multi-site environment?
Fascinating. My mind is exploding at the moment. I want to bring in Sam on community. I want to bring in Ben on the US. But before I do that, let's go to Daniel, because I want to hear Daniel's story as well. You probably have a similar story, don't you, Daniel?
Yeah, I would say so. So, we're in the seaweed industry, which obviously is incredibly well established in East Asia. It's an integral part of the diet. It's getting a lot of interest in Europe and North America. It's got incredible nutritional properties, very high source of iodine, amongst other things. And it's got a fantastic environmental story to tell. And so there's a lot of industry and interest in the industry. There's predicted growth rates, bodies, so EU for algae and various sort of semi-governmental bodies are starting to take interest, and we're right in the middle of that. Also, as businesses, whether they're farmers or processors and so forth, become more sophisticated, the technologies become better known for farming and processing, the costs sort of can come down, and that's where where we are, we're going through this relocation and scale up from our current sort of small scale factory to a bigger one I'm introducing, which will give us a capacity to increase our volumes quite significantly and reduce our costs. Beyond that, we're going through a sort of commercial strategy where we're looking at our not only the geographical locations, as was mentioned there, but the customer category and what's the right category to grow in and to get it to establish this foothold. So there's a lot of positive energy and ambition. We really have a strong growth plan that is attuned to that. But this is still quite nascent. There's a lot of customer education to do. There's a lot of R&D to do. So it's and the capital investment, for example, of putting a seaweed farm in is still pretty significant. And it's going to be 2 or 3 years till you are sort of, seeing the ROI on that. So how you pull all those threads together and make sure that you don't grow far more quickly than the market can bear, but equally you are keeping that position sort of at the forefront and helping that market to go and supplying demand as it increases is really what we're trying to think through.
Ben, having been there and done that and got the t-shirt with several customers, do you want to pick up on what Daniel's saying there? Like the whole idea about category and like David's strategy is not to go supermarket yet, and being very deliberate on those decisions. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that was our position for 4 years. So we built our business up in the UK in about 6,000 coffee shops and didn't enter any retail at all until about 20 months ago and began that retail journey. Our business is quite unique because we are at different cadences in different markets. So our business in Australia is much more developed, and we are 100% grocery distribution in the duopoly of Woolies and Coles. In the US, we're very much at the start of our journey in coffee, and in the UK, we are far along on our coffee journey, but just entering retail. So it's really interesting, a business that's running at all these different speeds at the same time. I think Daniel talked about the fact that businesses keeping up with category growth and category growth keeping up with manufacturing bases. Dairy alternatives haven't, so they've outgrown the capacity globally of manufacturers. And what you see is huge periods of out of stocks of brands like Oatly and Alpro, where they're just unable to fulfill consumer demand. So you will often go into a Tesco in an evening and you'll see lots of real estate of shelves that are just empty of product. So it's really pressured getting the balance right of when to enter retail and when to put the foot on the gas, because what we don't want to do as a business is let down retailers that have given us shelf space. So that's really important. But one of the strategies we have been using to be able to keep pace is to localize supply chains. So we've now got manufacturing in Australia. We've now got manufacturing in North America, which joins our manufacturing in the UK, and we'll expand that across to another site in Europe as well. So yeah, lots to keep everyone awake at night.
Brilliant.
If I can answer a question on that, Bridie.
Yeah, please.
Mentioning there, the Oatly and the dairy alternatives, supply and manufacturing not keeping pace with demand. Trying to think about lessons I learned myself. What was the root cause of that? Was it sort of a failure to anticipate how quickly the market would grow, or was it the lead times to build the capacity was just too long? And what caused it, and what might have been done to address it if you were to have your time again in that area, if you know?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. I don't think there's one single answer to it. I think that consumer demand is just massive, which has been generated by those brands pumping lots of cash into consumer marketing, which has been massively, massively successful. I think that supply chains haven't kept pace. So yeah, put the lead time to build sites, to install sites and to get sites online has been too long. I think probably cases of poor forecasting and planning as well, and just a perfect storm of bringing those things all together has led to this outstrip of demand versus capacity.
Really interesting.
I want to go to Sam. Daniel, I mean, I hadn't been aware of your product before I saw it in the research for this, and I'm now going to buy some, and you're obviously going to get quite a lot of, I mean, are you holding off on marketing until you've got this new manufacturing plant in place? Because I just got this feeling that this is going to be a great year for you, based on absolutely nothing. But I mean, it is things, you know, if you want to, like, apart from the fact that I just think it's, you know, as soon as you put a tiny bit of marketing advertising behind this product in this neck of the world, this could fly off the shelves.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It's a comment made earlier in the conversation about, you know, you allocate your cash to one area and then you realise you've got to spend it all in inventory or capital or something. So yes, we do have we've got an excellent marketing lady who's joined the team, and we've got a good marketing plan. And part of the investment that we've been doing, sort of that are coming kicking into a significant part of it. So with our social media channels and so forth. And then the other thing is where do we target that marketing? So I'm delighted you're gonna get some, and I would like to hear what you think. Is the B2C customer who's buying it, we're in Tesco on the incubator brand and so forth, the right customer to go after now? Is the education of that customer who's going to take it home and cook with it and know what to do with it, because it's a very unusual product, where the growth is going to come, or do we look at another category to focus on in the next 1 to 2 years, whilst that, you know, home user knowledge and experience is growing, and so are we thinking about, you know, focusing our marketing in, you know, sort of more the trade area? It's not my area of expertise. I know we've got a great person looking at it, but it needs to be a significant part of, as you say, getting more of a foothold with a great product that's new to a lot of people.
Yeah, sorry, that was our fire alarm, but it was just a drill. Yeah, so you were breaking up a bit then, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying. I'd love to talk to you some more about that. Like, I have a personal opinion on that, obviously from a marketing point of view. Yeah, and which channel to go after. I mean, like David's saying, you know, TikTok has been amazing for them. Obviously, magazine reviews. You can get just one thing can trigger a deluge, can't it? And it's being trying to be agile in that respect. Sam, so we touched on community there. Did you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, sure. I guess a lot of people often ask what Young Foodies do, and my answer to that is, I mean, supply chain is just a very small cog in what Young Foodies do. Young Foodies is founded on the premise that consumerism has fundamentally changed, but the industry at large hasn't. And so most major retailers, and I guess on the retail front, most major retailers still operate the way they did 10, 15 years ago, and their thought process and the lines that they stock are still very, very similar to that. You still see huge multinationals filling up most of the real estate on shelves. Yes, there are challenger brands starting to break in, but, you know, like, the reason Young Foodies exists is as a platform for our community of brands or community of challenger brands to accelerate their growth. So Young Foodies, like, yes, there's a supply chain team. We also have a recruitment team. We have a training team. We have a community team who look after 300 brands who all help each other on a community platform to accelerate their own growth. So they can all talk to each other. They can all find out, you know, who's the buyer at M&S in this category. You know, you can literally ask that question on our platform and find the answer, rather than trawling LinkedIn or trying to, you know, like, dig around. So it's like instant access to information and knowledge sharing. And I think that's probably the core of what we do, is literally our community. It's not supply chain or what I do. It's supporting that community of brands to accelerate their growth into the markets, and, you know, just take that market share that, you know, because their products are fundamentally better than what's produced by multinationals, because they're targeted at the right consumers. You know, they're often sustainable. You know, the ethics behind them are much better, and that's what the consumer realistically wants. You know, like, you know, every trend says that this is true. So it is happening, and it's sometimes a slow process. But yeah, I would definitely say, look, if you don't know the answer, go network, go find out who does, and you will save yourself a lot of grief than just trying to stumble around in the dark, perhaps, especially when you're young. You know, that first couple of years is really critical to getting as much knowledge as you can.
Phil, can I bring you in here? So, you know, like, from obviously our point of view, we would say this, wouldn't we? But from an integrations point of view, there has to be, you know, some of the magic sauce behind scaling, and scaling, you know, whilst remaining agile. Do you want to just touch on, I don't know, do you want to touch on some, like, this is your opportunity to talk software? Do you want to go?
Oh, blimey.
Okay, that's a bad move by my part.
I think we're in the best of worlds and the worst of worlds, let's face it, and I'm sure we could all comment on this, go back 10, 15, 20 years when the platforms that we're using today just wouldn't exist. So Xero Unleashed didn't exist 15 years ago. And Shopify and these platforms that you can just pick up, literally sign up tomorrow. So these new young people who are starting their challenger businesses today, what a fantastic opportunity they've got because these systems are there. On the flip side of that, there's probably too much choice. There's too many things out there. There's too many things to think about. And again, if you're great at sales and marketing and product promotion and TikTok, if you're good at TikTok, you may not be so great at Unleashed. If you're great at Unleashed, you may not be so great at TikTok. They're different skills.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. But
oh no, I was definitely pointing at myself there.
We're still working on the swipe functionality.
And it's partly it's overwhelm, but partly it's the frustration. I see this a lot of people getting great solutions and then actually making things worse because they don't really understand them or getting them set up properly. So absolutely great software is part of the solution, but trying to understand which great software you should be using, how it should be integrated, and then the ability to scale and how it all works together. Because as we know, Shopify and Shopify Plus, that can really, really scale in huge volume and everything. Xero can scale with your business, but not in transaction volume. And you need to start thinking about how some of these pieces, really sit together in the business. And I like to say, a bit like supply chain, a lot of these new businesses don't have systems people in, don't have data people, don't have data analytics people, reporting people. That really is coming down the pipe much further on, and that's why they probably need, again, we're back to this discussion of what do you outsource and when do you outsource it, and when do you go and get skills that you haven't got internally. And of course, when you first start set up, it is probably just you on your own, isn't it? And you hopefully find Xero or something like that and start to understand the things that can really help you in your business, but you probably haven't got the budget to go out there and start getting the consultants in or getting the people who need to support. So again, I think it's absolutely key where Unleash can help, where Xero can help, and all these other things, but going direct and bootstrapping your business and doing it on a shoestring.
I want to go back to the US quickly, because I know David and Ben, you've got experience in this area, and I don't think we fully covered it. I mean, it sounds like you both are starting your journeys. I mean, from a community point of view, obviously, like what Sam was saying, probably none of us are the first to have ever done what we're doing, or although Daniel might be. But you're trying to, and again, Unleashed itself has tried to break America and pulled out several years ago. So we've all tried to go there. Can we go back to that, Ben, with you for a minute, because you're just starting out on your American journey?
Yeah, still starting out, but 3 years in. So we've got a team East Coast and West Coast. I think we've got about 14 folks out in the US now, including our founder and CEO is moved his family out there to help shape the team. I think it's really challenging. It's so vast. The temptation is to think that there's lots of gold to be made in the States very quickly and easily, and that if you've got a well-established brand in the UK, that it'll just translate into the US, and we'll win loads of listings, and we'll be really successful. But the fact is, particularly interstate logistics is incredibly expensive. We have been battered by port strikes and delays at port, which has really led to us deciding to move manufacturing locally to the States. And everything's on a bigger scale. Marketing costs more money. Competition is tough. Particularly retail aisles are huge, so there's a massive proliferation of product and choice, so getting cut through is tough. So it's a difficult market for sure. We're seeing some good success, particularly West Coast, and particularly in coffee too, and for us the natural channel, so the equivalents of your Planet Organics and Whole Foods and your farm shops and delis is a huge category in itself. So there's a great prize to be won there. So yeah, I think inventory planning and a real tight focus on logistics partners and costs is quite key to making the US successful.
Brilliant, thank you. David, did you want to follow up on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, would agree with what Ben's just saying. You know, the US is a massive market. However, the internet makes it singular as well for us. And from a D2C proposition, we've found that America has grown to the scale of the UK within a year. And you know, the engagement you get from the consumers, they may have slightly differing opinions, but you know, for us, you know, they are perhaps less cost focused and very much, you know, like the flavor and function element of our products. UK, you know, question far more about price, and in terms of the feedback we get from the surveys that we do with our consumers, tends to be right. But we are partnering with a number of people to look at how we gain traction, particularly in the restaurants and pubs and clubs type trade. We are already in a couple of retail outlets, Williams Sonoma being one, and a few others. But you know, again, picking your battles, picking your timings, and ensuring that you make a success of it, because it is huge. It is very easy to go wrong, and as you say, expect that you can eat the elephant in one go. It's not the case. You really do have to do it small piece by small piece.
I like the imagery you're giving us there. I might use that one going forward. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. I think we've done both those topics justice. Thank you, all of you. I want to move on to some final quickfire advice, I suppose, for people that are watching and for each other. So I want to talk quickly about circular supply chain. I know, congratulations, Minor Figures got their B Corp after 2 years of assessing yourselves and auditing and all the rest of it. So, I mean, amazing, congratulations. And we're very much joined by sustainable businesses from Beyond Alcohol and Mara Seaweed as well. And I wanted to talk about circular supply chain very quickly and then finish with a quick fire. So I suppose general question, are you addressing the circular supply chain in your business, and how? Let's start with that. I'll start with you, Ben, because we have touched on this before and we've talked a little bit. And I suppose, it is new territory for everyone, and not everyone can do all of it, but let's talk about what we can do, baby steps, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the shout out about B Corp. That's something we're really proud of. We've been carbon neutral for a couple of years, and this sort of builds on that. It's been challenging to get the B Corp over the line, firstly because they're so busy, which is great news for everyone. They have so many brands applying, and such a small team that everything's very delayed. So it's great to hear that community is expanding. I think there's almost 5,000 brands now that are B Corp. And then you just get the complexity of adopting new company articles, and you've got to get all your investors or shareholders to sign them, and just things that really drag. But I would like to think we've been living and breathing the sort of principles of being a force for better for some time. Fundamentally, what we do in making dairy alternatives is try to reframe the sustainable impact of dairy. I'm not personally a vegan, and I wouldn't want to get into an argument about it, but there is certainly a lot less water and land usage involved in creating a dairy alternative. So that's always been at the root of what we've wanted to do. We always and still do have a lot of discomfort around the fact our product is packed in a container, a Tetra Pak, that often just ends up in the bin. We're also quite uncomfortable with the fact that we're often shipping around a product that's 90% water to 40 different countries. That doesn't feel really comfortable for us. So we have worked on solutions to improve that. We have created these refill stations that are in package-free stores, about 150 package-free stores across the UK, where people can go and refill up a container, and the packaging that the refills come in are sent to an MVAL site, which is then turned back into green energy. So that feels pretty good. But yeah, I think it's balancing the tension of consumerism and success and delivering top line with being a force for good, and trying to keep that in check at all times. But it's difficult, it's expensive, it takes a team. We're fortunate enough to have a sustainability manager who can do that 24/7. And we've impressed the importance of that upon our 3PL and our manufacturing partners as well. So yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of noise out there as well, and a lot of people trying to sell you services and systems and processes and ways of doing things. But I think a big audit of your sort of supply chain and your processes is really the starting point to really living and breathing a sort of circular business.
Great, thank you. Daniel, are you still there?
Yeah, I certainly am. Yeah, so one thing that we're really proud of, and that actually got me into the seaweed industry in the first place, is seaweed is an amazing product because it grows. It doesn't need fresh water. It doesn't need fertilizer. It doesn't need land. It actually takes carbon and nitrogen out of the water. So it's a really sustainable and in fact regenerative product. So any sort of carbon footprint comes from the supply chain. So we're really conscious that actually we want to be net zero or even net negative. So how do we get to that circular economy from a supply chain perspective? There are a few things we're doing. So part of this relocation I'm moving our factory from Edinburgh back into Fife, closer to the source of where we get our wild harvest seaweed. So we're reducing road miles. We're looking at getting some electric vans this year as well. On that sort of traffic, that shipping, we've got some customers in the US. We'd like to grow there. Previously, due to less than the planning being not as good as it could, we've been air freighting some of our products. So we're looking at how we agree with the supplier a longer lead time and can move to shipping freight. On the packaging just discussed there, some of our seaweed product comes in a plastic pouch, and we're looking at either paper or even seaweed polymer, biodegradable material. And there are some really good companies doing some really interesting biodegradable packaging at the moment. And then, as I sort of alluded to earlier, probably our most carbon intensive bit of the process is drying the seaweed. You get the wet out of the sea, clearly dry it, and then have it as a usable product. So with this move, we're really looking at how have we been drying, what will we be drying, how are we using that energy as efficiently as possible, both for cost and for carbon footprint, and then what's coming down the line. It's probably a few years away yet, but so at the moment we're probably going to be using mains gas, ideally vegan gas, which you can get, but hydrogen at some point will probably be a viable source, working with CHP, combined heat powers or something. So across all those fronts, reducing and trying to get our supply chain down to zero is absolutely part of the Marah ethos and ambition.
Excellent. Excellent. I love the idea. We obviously, some of our customers are sustainable packaging. Is it Magic Mushroom, Josh? That's not the right name, but you know, there's some guys who make packaging out of mushrooms that are customers of ours. You can see they feature in some of our blogs. David.
Yeah, bizarre. We've actually spoken to the Magic Mushroom guys about their mycelium packaging as a potential alternative, but at the moment it's not the cheapest way of going around packaging. As a business, yeah, I mean, obviously we look at the supply chain as a whole. Within our manufacturing companies, we're working with people who invest heavily in renewable energies. Now, obviously, the benefits for them that they'll have cost reductions which they can pass on to us, so there's a commercial angle to it as well as the sustainable angle, but I think that tends to happen within all of this. We use glass bottles. We ensure that we have as large a percentage as possible in terms of recycled materials in those. We're looking at packaging as a whole. We're a D2C operation predominantly, so we are manufacturing bottles and then taking them from packaging and putting them into other packaging to send out to customers. So sometimes it's not about the sustainability of your packaging as a whole, but looking at reducing as much as you possibly can, so that you can eliminate as much from that chain as possible. Although you can't put a glass bottle in the post with a stamp on it, it's not going to arrive. We do have a number of ingredients that come from all corners of the world. But again, the partners that we work with, we ensure the credentials of those suppliers to ensure that there's no untoward practices in terms of how the farms are operating. And we tend to find, we're working with coconut farms, and you could go there and it would be a great place to have a holiday. It's not a huge farm or factory. And as an employer ourselves, just ensuring that we work with at least a good standard, far better than minimum in terms of wages, and ensure investment in our own people as well.
Sam, do you want to pick up on?
Yeah, Brian, just sustainability is definitely, it's not a trend, it's the thing, and everyone should definitely be very much focused on it. To touch on biodegradable packaging, at the moment you need to be really careful if you are going to switch to biodegradable packaging, because especially if you're in a multi, some of the majors will not accept biodegradable packaging, and you need to check that before you make the jump. I've seen a brand move to biodegradable packaging and be delisted instantly. So don't make that mistake. Do check that, and obviously pressure will come, things will change, but do check that before you make that jump.
Thank you. Do you want to just go around the room actually in that respect? Is that if for people who are starting out on their circular supply chain journey, is there some kind of simple steps, the things that you can do in closing the loop? I think we may have touched on them already. Has anyone got any thoughts top of mind?
Just I think it just goes back to what Ben said around auditing your supply chain. Take a look at it, take that time to have a good review of what it is, your supply chain does, and, focus on different elements of it. Again, I'm not sure on the scale of Ben's business. We're a small business. We don't have a sustainability manager who can focus on things 24/7, but, pick your battles, look at, where you can gain most benefit, look at the ones that are really going to drive the credentials will align themselves to your brand, to the ethos, the values, the vision of your brand, and at the same time ensure that you give that value to the consumer as well.
So just to finish up, guys, and carrying on in this vein, I want us to go around, and on the topic of supply chain resilience, maybe we can call out one thing that we think we're going to try and adhere to in the next sort of 6 to 12 months? And one thing that you think might be coming down the line that you're going to sort of have to address that might be uncomfortable? Is that clear? Is that as clear as mud for everyone? The question, Daniel?
Yeah, so I think over the next 6 to 8 months, it's going to be look as far ahead as possible and order as early as possible across everything, as we've discussed repeatedly. Delivery times are flexible and growing, and it's easy to be caught short. So really trying to think ahead about what we're going to need and make sure those orders are in. And then the second part, what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Oh, I suppose something that may isn't sort of being looked at right now, but you think is maybe a future trend or something coming down the line that you think you are going to turn your mind to.
So I think obviously the biggest up in the air thing for the moment for us to have in mind is energy prices. Who knows where they're going and where they're going to end up. And as we've discussed, they're not just going to affect our own individual businesses, but they affect every business. So the sort of the fluctuation and the chaos that comes with that is something we're going to have to be very aware and prepared to adapt to and content with, I think.
Great, cool. Ben, you look at your phone.
I was just reaching for the mute. One thing that we're going to have to we've got a challenge on ingredients and cost. I think that's the thing we're going to face into this year. It's probably similar for a lot of brands out there. Scarcity of ingredients or rising costs of ingredients. So that's the one thing. And I think as we continue to scale, our kind of tight focus is still on team. So upskilling existing team and building out and bringing in new heads to continue to support the growth ambition of the business. So those would be my two things. Thank you.
Coming back to you, David.
For me, a lot of my focus over the next few months is going to be around process and planning. People have already spoken about that S&OP structure, building that into the business. We're starting to get far better in terms of the information that we have available, and also in terms of we've invested in people and team. If I was to think about one thing that's coming down the tracks that's going to impact everybody, it's going to be this cost of living crisis. I think we're some way off, all of us, some way off from where it's going to end up. And I think the next 6 to 12 months are going to be a challenge for everybody, across the UK, Europe, globally, before things settle down. And they will settle down. Sam mentioned right at the start, it's a pendulum. Things will redress. But when you've seen containers pricing for glass coming in from China to America go from $2,000 to $21,000 a container, that type of increase won't be sustainable, not for the long term, without pricing being passed on to consumers. And it's about how will businesses adapt and manage that to a level that keeps them viable and keeps them pushing to have that consumer engagement and ensure that they enjoy the growth that perhaps they've been enjoying for the last few years.
Sam, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think transport costs which is fundamentally based on energy costs. Obviously, shipping lines are not guaranteeing prices past 3 months before you could buy futures contracts for 2-3 years in advance. That's over. Doesn't matter how big you are. I've seen huge clients with turnovers of 300 million. I've worked with a manufacturer in South America, turnover 300 million. They can't get a shipping container price more than 3 months in advance. It's crazy. So that's coming down the pipe. It is real. You need to build it into your cost model now, because otherwise when you go to get on shelf, your margin will be eroded or won't be there at all. And then stay agile. Think about what your product is. If lead times are blowing out, what can you do to renovate your product? Is there something you can do that, like that esoteric ingredient that you have to have? Is there an alternative? Like, what can you do in terms of like your actual product itself to get to a more agile, a more deliverable solution that you've got more control of? Does that exist? put some effort into it, put some time and energy into it, because it will save you in the long run.
Good shout. Phil, any thoughts? You're always very philosophical at this point normally.
And I would say, don't we live in a fantastic time? What an amazing time to live in, and an opportunity, and not so much of what we're talking about is actually making things better for future generations. And maybe food does need to cost a bit more, and we need to look at all the aspects of the economy, and maybe this, more localized supply chains and everything it's all about. And it's fantastic with the products that we talk about, the challenger products, so much about vegan sustainability, carbon neutral, circular economy, and makes me excited to come to work every day, to work with clients like this and work with businesses like this. I would say it all comes down to so many things that we spoke about here, and even carbon neutral, circular economy, sustainability. You've got to know your numbers, and you've got to understand your data. So that would be my point to finish on, I think.
And on that point, I enjoy coming to work every day, and I think Josh does too. So we're in a very privileged position where we get to help businesses like yourselves. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I hope you got something from that. That was my intention all along. Is there anything anybody would like to say, or anything I've missed at this point? Brilliant. I'll let you get about your days. We are bang on 10:30. Look at me. Whoop, whoop. So good, so nice to meet you all. No doubt I'll be in touch. There are more of these that are coming around. If you did find it useful, please let me know. I will try and get feedback from all of you in a short survey, because I want these to just only get stronger. And we're in such a fortunate position to have supply chain professionals like yourselves that can share your experience with a wider community, and that is going to be my goal for the next 6 to 12 months. Have a good Friday and weekend. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bryony.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Bryony.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much, dude.
Thank you.
Cheers all.
Bye.